Unfiltered Unspoken, and I am glad to have you back. Well, today we have a honor to have a special guest. His name is Glen White. He is the CEO of Options Capital Group. Glen is the author of Heart to Submit. He's a husband and a father of three, a Christian of faith that was perfectly healthy to almost dead in 44 days. Glen flatlined for 6 minutes twice and was placed on life support. We're going to chat with Glen about his life experience and how he woke up to a new heart and a new life with Christ. So it is a pleasure to have Glen on.
Hi, Demetria. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today, Glen?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It is a pleasure. This is a God's honor to have you on here because I know your testimony is going to touch so many.
Well, I hope so. I guess I don't want to say that it will, but I certainly hope so.
I think it will. I think it's going to touch so many people. Hey, so I'm going to bring our co-host Sid in. And
okay.
Sid's going to chime. Y'all are going to have a conversation. Sid is going to ask you a few questions to get us started. And we will see you shortly. Let's welcome our co-host, Sid. Come right on in, Sid. Hey, how are you, Sid?
How are y'all?
Hi, Sid.
Looking beautiful. So I'm gonna my pleasure. I'm going to let you and Glen go ahead and chat so y'all can kick me out for a few. Have fun.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we are actually, before we get too deeper into anything, we're going to come back. We're going to let you tell the story how you're going to tell it. I always, and that's just how I get my, the questions I'm going to ask is how I come up with them. I listen to it the way, you tell it. And I get my inspiration from that. So before we hop into that, we're going to go on a short break, but we will be back to listen to the life experience of Glen.
Okay.
See you guys in a sec.
It is not death most people are afraid of. It is getting to the end of life only to realize that you never truly lived. There was a study done, a hospital study, on 100 elderly people facing death close to their last breath. They were asked to reflect about their life's biggest regret. Nearly all of them said they regretted not the things they did, but the things they didn't do, the risks they never took, the dreams they didn't pursue. I ask you, will your last words be, if only I hit, hey, you, wake up. Why do you exist? Life is not meant to simply work, wait for the weekend, and pay rent. No, I don't know much, but I know this. Every person on this earth has a gift. And I apologize to the black community, but I can no longer pretend. Martin Luther King, that man never had a dream. That dream had him. See, people don't choose dreams. Dreams choose them. So the question I'm getting to is, do you have the courage to grab the dream that picked you, that befits you and grips you? Or will you let it get away and slip through?
All right, we are back with Mr. Glen Allen, here to share his life experience with us, who is also working on a book that is close to being finished. Now you can wait till the end and tell us about that because we're gonna shameless plug you at the end like we do everybody. But
Okay.
let's go ahead and get it to why you're here.
Sure.
What's your life experience? How did we get into this this genre of life here?
Okay. Well, I guess, there's probably a lot that I can leave for the Q&A, but I mean, obviously the heart transplant part of it all, I'll kind of jump to the end, right, or the conclusion of it all, and leave it at that and say that what really happened for me, or how I got to where I am, was that my story started with just a normal day, and I got sick, just kind of out of nowhere, I guess. I had been a pretty healthy individual, and at the age of 39, I found myself going to the doctor out of nowhere. I didn't have any heart conditions or anything like that, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And so when that took place, they kind of kept misdiagnosing and misdiagnosing and misdiagnosing, because they, obviously they're not going to jump to, something like as serious as coronary heart failure right out of the gate. And so that led to a series of tests and processes and so on and so forth. And to kind of expedite down the road, that was on March 13th. And after a series of back and forths to the hospital and different doctors and some tests and so on and so forth, ultimately they were like, well, there's something going on with your heart because it's barely pumping. So we're going to do a biopsy. And so they scheduled a biopsy for April 26th. And as of April 26th, I go in to do this procedure because I'm at the hospital and things aren't going well. And they're kind of at a place where they're like, based on where your heart is pumping, you shouldn't even be conscious. So the numbers aren't making sense. For some reason, you're able to stand and walk and talk, but by all metrics that we have and that we know, your heart's basically pumping at 11%, and you should basically be on life support. And so they go in to do a biopsy, and at that point, because my heart was pumping so low, I basically bled out and I flatlined at that point. And that was at Parkland Hospital in Dallas-Fort Worth. And Parkland Hospital is, I guess, made famous by the fact that that's the same hospital that John F. Kennedy was taken to after he was shot when he was on his trip here. And so they don't specialize in heart procedures. So at that point, once they discovered that my heart had failed, the only thing that was going to save my life was a heart transplant. So they put me on life support. They put me on an ECMO machine, which essentially is a machine that takes the blood out of your body and it reoxygenates it and then pumps it back into your body for you, right? Like basically an out of your body heart, and then puts it back in. And so they did that, and then they put me in an ambulance to transfer me over to Baylor Hospital, where they do specialize in heart transplant procedures. And in transport, I flatlined again, apparently. And so at that point, they put me on life support for 6 days, where they were able to put me on the transplant list, find a heart, and then actually perform the procedure, which, obviously I was asleep for all of this. So I woke up to the doctors informing me that I'd flatlined and that they had to give me a new heart to save my life. So that was kind of the shocking revelation of it all. And that all happened in about 44 days. So from perfectly healthy to dead in 44 days. And once all of that happened is when I kind of learned all the miracles that took place to kind of get me there. So you kind of, obviously in retrospect, you see it in reverse, and you get to live through the surrealness of, what God does in all the mountains that he moves to
Hey, Glen.
I'm not sure whether or not I can't hear you, Glenn. Do me a favor, check your system because can everyone hear me pretty good? Yeah, yeah. And Glenn, you're the only one that I'm sorry that at this point that I'm unable to hear. Something went out on your sound. What I'm going to do, Glenn, can you hear me pretty good? And can you hear me, Glenn? Can you hear me? I don't know. Can everyone else hear me pretty good? Okay, what I'm going to do is, Glenn, if you can hear me, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run to a commercial briefly. What I would need for you to do is close out and just come back in to see whether or not we can pick your sound up from that point. And then we'll try to follow up because everything looks like it's okay on this side here. There you go. I'm hearing you now.
Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you pretty good.
Yeah, something, I don't know what happened. I guess my mic just cut off or something. So not sure what happened there. I had to like plug in a headphone because I couldn't hear anything of what you were saying.
It sounds great.
Okay.
But now what I do want to add, you have a speaker on and it's giving feedback. There's a speaker because I'm getting around sound.
Okay. Let me see if I can turn that speaker off.
While we're working on that, I'm going to go straight to commercial and I'll come back to straighten that.
Okay.
If I died today, would I be proud of the life I lived? Death. It's the one thing that puts everything else into perspective.
Or will eventually have a problem that life insurance can help solve. As life insurance agents, we are and will always be a necessity in America, guys. People just think about funerals, they think about the funeral expense, but they don't think about the residual effects that deaths have on us. And if you've never dealt with a death firsthand or close to you, you wouldn't understand. A lot of people in America, they don't understand. That's why they don't feel life insurance is a necessity, and we're here to change that. It also safeguards your family against debt. Everything that's going on in America. Bills, high interest rates, gas, inflation. What we do is a necessity. Life insurance is a necessity to help with these things. You never know the effects that it's going to have down the line, guys. If you have family members that are not covered, get them covered because it's going to affect you one way or another, right? So you just have to know you have a license, put it to use, and you are a necessity here in America. Thank you.
And just to first say thank you to all of you who are tuning in on today's broadcast. I hope that you are very excited and getting something out of today's broadcast. We are working very hard here at Unfiltered Unspoken just to be able to bring you information that is life-changing. We are reaching across the world to bring in individuals who have suffered with the same issues that some of you have suffered with, or possibly even know individuals who have are suffering with the same thing. Today, I wanted to take this opportunity just to show you a few of our upcoming shows that we are putting into place for you all, just for life-changing experiences, that you all will have the opportunity to get some information. Look at all of the listing of the individuals that we have coming. I know that you all are going to greatly enjoy where we are going. We truly believe that we have been assigned to do this, and we know that if you tune in, continue to follow us, and you can follow us. At the bottom, I have all the listings of where you can follow us. If you are looking for individuals to come on your podcast, we will be more than happy to assist where we can. And I'm asking you all, please take the opportunity to share. We also are open to any type of financial donations that we may continue this mission and be a blessing to many of those who are out there. So as we return back to the show, please remember, stay open, give yourself a chance so that you can live the life that you were purposed to do. Thank you.
My iPad Pro, and for some reason I plugged in headphones, but
Thank you all. I like to apologize. We were just having a little bit of difficulties, but I believe we have those things now ironed out. And again, thank you all for being a part of Unfiltered, Unspoken. And what I'm going to do, I'm getting ready to bring our guest back in, Glen, and we're going to see how it works from here. But again, I greatly appreciate you all's patience, and we're going to take it from here. Thank you all.
okay.
Okay, Glenn.
Are you hearing me?
All right, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay.
We had a few technical difficulties. We apologize. We're back up and running. I hope everyone's still tuning in. Don't leave. We're still here. Glenn, I'm going to bring Sid back in. She's going to try to go back to where you stopped at, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know where it cut off, Sid. So if you want to,
it's all right. So you were pretty much telling us that from start to finish, it was about 44 days, that you're finding out this, massive turn of events here.
Right.
And that's where we stop.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So when that happened, that's obviously kind of where it picks up for me. And at that point, I'm, then living with the recovery, the aftermath of picking back up the pieces of, learning to walk again, learning memory function again, learning how to figure out how to navigate with, heart transplant. And then, my journey back to, I guess what you'd consider, normal after an event like that. And, and then how that obviously, filters back or folds back into my life. And so, all the things that's taught me, informed, and and not that I wasn't already walking with Christ prior to that, but it certainly has even had a greater impact on what I've done and what I've prioritized since that moment. So and I think that's kind of what led to the inspiration of the book, and and doing things like this. So
that sounds like it was quite a ride. I'm glad you're still here with us, still able to give your life experience. And I'm sure that was, just hard to get through, hard to travel through. Now, with that being said, going into this situation, what was your home life like? Are you married, family? What was at stake here? If you did ultimately pass away?
Yeah. So I would have passing away, I would leave behind. At the time, my kids were 11, 7, and 4 at the time of my heart transplant. They're all since, they've all had birthdays this year, so they all just turned 14, 10, and 7. So slightly older now than they were, but obviously an interesting ride for them. Married to my wife, we've now been married 8 years. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting. I think it's, you realize that not just you took a journey, but, everybody in your life that you mean something to took a journey, right? You wake up and your life is certainly altered and changed forever. But my wife's life is altered and changed forever. My kids' lives altered and changed forever. My parents' lives altered and changed forever. And I think one of the really, really amazing things that this had such an impact on is all the people within my proximity that I got to have a front row seat to see how God impacted their lives, and to see how it brought so many of them closer to God, seeing me walk through this, and how it made them reevaluate what they were doing and what they were dealing with, and many of my family members started, rethinking and kind of reevaluating their own relationship with Christ. There were a lot of relationships that were healed and mended, and things that, that really kind of reset after, a huge event like that. And so, it really does speak to, God using all things for good. So.
Absolutely. Now, being as though, you were essentially healthy when this all went down, were you given an explanation as to how everything just kind of formulated itself, or?
Eventually, yes. Yeah. After they finally took the old heart out of my body and were able to dissect it, they finally were able to figure out that it's something called sarcoidosis, which, it is a genetic disease that you're born with, and it is hereditary. It's actually the same thing that Bernie Mac, if you remember him passing away at a fairly young age as well, it's the same thing that he passed away from. And so the long and short of it is that your body can get a viral infection, and it believes that it's killed the viral infection, but it continues to attack certain organs within your body. And there's 2 different variants of it. One actually specifically targets just the heart. And then there's another variant that can attack either the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, like many different organs, right? And it can cause anything from death to, loss of function. If it's not a vital organ, obviously. Some people even get it in their eyes and they can just go blind. So there's just different variations to it, but can certainly be devastating for that individual. And so, for those reasons, it has a very high mortality rate, because you usually don't know that you have it until you get very sick, and you have very limited amount of time for them to figure out what's wrong and why. So
That is, that's tough. Now, with hearing that news, does that prompt you to test your kids, or, how is everybody feeling about that? And, how is everybody proceeding with it? Are we still on eggshells? Do we have anxiety? Like, it's a lot, I'm sure, to get back to, normal day-to-day life. So how is everybody adjusting?
It is something that you do have to think about, I guess. My kids, there is a possibility that they could have it. They can't really be tested until they get much older. It's not something you can really test for until you're in your mid to early 20s. And it does require a biopsy, really, to know definitively if you have it or not in your heart, or if you have the one that's in some of your other organs, there's some other things that you can do, like some really, really in-depth 3D, CT scans and things like that you can do with those organs, that can tell you if you have it in some other parts of your body, outside of obviously waiting for the signs, that develop. So there's that, and that's something that, obviously we will have to, cross that bridge when we come to it. Outside of that part of it, the other part of it for me is living with the knowledge that I know that transplanted organs don't last forever. And so living with the knowledge that, there's a strong possibility that I can and may have to endure another transplant somewhere down the road, and when and if that time may come. And there's no statistics really for someone at my age, really, like as a fully healthy functioning male having a transplant at my age, there's not a lot of data on it. I'm actually in, my test case is in a lot of studies because there's not a lot of examples for doctors to go off of. If you can imagine, most people that get organ transplants or heart transplants and those sorts of things are usually people in their upper 50s to late 70s, or very, very small children, mostly infants, right, that are born with some sort of defect or abnormality. And so the data is very skewed, but the average life expectancy for most of those individuals is like 10 years. And so that's, and the numbers have gotten a little bit better with modern medicine. But those are the numbers and the data. And those are kind of those two age groups dominate the category for any transplants. And so, so that makes it kind of difficult to really gauge, even for the doctors, like, what are you looking at and what should you expect in terms of how long you might live and how things are going to go. But I think that's where, the faith comes in, and just saying, well, I've got extra time, right? Because the reality is, that last day could have very well been my last day. And so every day since then has been an extra day for me. And so I have to make every day from that day forward more extra time, and I have to take as much time as I can and do as much as I can with it.
Glenn, I tell you, that is definitely uh, something to experience. And as I was sitting back listening, I know you shared some things as it related to your walk now
Mhm.
um, with Christ, if you
Yeah.
will. Um, Prior to that, because I know people maybe listening. Prior to that, what has changed? Because I'm almost certain that you had a relationship prior. What has changed, if you will, in reference to the relationship? Because I know you had one prior. Through that experience, if you can recall, and this may be a twofold
Mhm.
question, um, was there any, was there like this blank space, when, through the flatlining and this transition, was it a black dark space or whatever space it was, to whereas your evolving back, if you will, um change that relationship or strengthening that relationship, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I can answer both parts. There was no sense of anything in the time in the in between. For for me, in real time, it felt like seconds, if you could believe that. It felt like I went to sleep and then I woke up, and I knew that a lot of time had passed. I had enough cognitive function to recognize that I was no longer in the same room. I was at a different hospital. There was Baylor on the wall, and I knew that I wasn't at Baylor when I went to sleep. Like, I knew that there were noticeable differences, and so I knew that obviously a considerable amount of time had passed. And then they started asking me questions like, do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is? So, you know, from cognitive function, I'm like, okay, obviously it's been longer than it feels. But I didn't know how long it had been until they told me, when I went to that procedure that day, it was a Thursday morning, and it was around 9:30, 10 o'clock when that procedure started. When they woke me up, it was Tuesday of the following week. I mean,
Okay.
so it had been a considerable number of days that had passed, and I didn't have and for me, it was like, it was just like if you went to sleep, the night before, and then you woke up the next morning, right? It didn't feel any different in that regard. So in terms of time, now in terms of my relationship with God and what was going on with me then, I think, it obviously wasn't an instant, but it was a journey. And I think the biggest thing that changed for me, and the biggest revelation, was how I see and value time, and the way that God revealed to me something that I was still very much struggling with. And that was control. And I think, while I had been taking the journey with him for a long time, and very much was trying to see things that he wanted me to see, and he was taking me through highs and lows and dips and valleys and peaks. There were things I was learning along the way, but one of the things that I just refused to let go of was the illusion of control that I wanted to feel I had in my life, over my business, my existence, my time, right? My kids, my wife, my finances, everything in my life for me was, I wanted to have this sense of control over it. I wanted to manipulate it. I wanted to make it what I wanted it to be. And I think I can look back now on my life, and I can see God continuing to teach me lessons again and again and again that I was too hard-headed to learn and recognize. And I think in taking my life in that moment, he was like, okay, you're not seeing the revelation that I want you to see. You're not seeing that the illusion of time and the illusion of control is just an illusion. You think that you can control this. You think that you have the ability to manipulate it. It's like, okay, well, what if you didn't have any more time? Now what? Right? Like, what would you do then? Right?
And
And
that's
so
what leads me to
flipped it
that
away.
next question. That's
Yeah.
what leads me to that next question. How are you because of that, how are you beginning now to see days? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In reference to like the importance of the days, or has there been any drastic change to whereas prior to that, because you have shared some of the things that that this traumatic experience, if you will, have caused you to see what it was for. But are you beginning? Are things changing, or how you see today's? In other words, we've heard a lot of people say, because of some things that may transpire, that I live every day as if it's my last. How are you beginning to view each day? Because I'm sure I can't wait till your book come out, because I'm very interested in reading that, because I'm sure it's some stuff in there that you may not be talking about, at this junction. And I get it, because it's a
Right.
lot to unpack. But
Right.
how are you viewing days now?
Well, I think it's, I live every day as my last is a great bumper sticker. But I think, the reality of it is you have to choose to prioritize. You have to choose to prioritize things in your life in a certain way. And I think, for me, because I place an undue importance on time. Time for me has become more important than money, right? And I think that's very countercultural, right? Like,
Mm.
most people would probably put money higher than time, right? Because of what I went through, I can't, right? Like, it's not possible for me to place a higher importance on money than time, because time is just too valuable for me at this point. And
Wow.
because I place such a high value on time, it's like there's no, it becomes impossible for me to do certain things. And a practical application of that is like, you know, as a CEO, as a business, right? You would be inclined when you're, I mean, I'm ambitious. I'm very ambitious by nature, but because of that revelation that God showed me, it's like, if God wants me to have it for my business, if he wants my business to move forward, to move further, he's gonna allow it to happen tomorrow just as much as he would allow it to happen today. And
Right.
so therefore I know that I don't need to stay at the office that extra 5 minutes, that extra 30 minutes, that extra hour. And because I have such a high priority on time, I can't take that 6 o'clock business meeting. I can't go to happy hour and have that appointment with somebody who's not high on my priority list because time is too precious for me. So I'm going home to spend that time with the wife, with the kids, because time is above the money, right? And so that's where it's like, when that happens for me, that's why it makes it easier to prioritize certain things. I mean, the same thing is true for God, right?
Mm-hmm.
God becomes such a high priority, and because I value time so highly, well, my time with God becomes a very high priority, right? Because I
Now,
know how precious it is.
okay. Now, are those individuals around you, such as your kids, your wife, because of this, and not divulging, them because they're not here, but do you see a change in reference to them, whether it be negative, positive, is there a change in them as a family through this incident?
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, kind of funny, but I tell people the story and the caption of the speaking event that I had just the other evening with the men, that was at the young professionals group that I got to speak at. One of the stories I told them was that it was actually, my kids were one of the first catalysts to stripping that illusion for me, and they were one of the first reasons that spurred me on to write the book. Because when I got out of the hospital, and and obviously things had started to take on a different life, a different shape, and a different importance for me. But one of the things that I saw for the first time with my own eyes, like God kind of opened my eyes, and like the blind man on the road to Damascus, I started seeing clearer. And my kids were showing me that before this incident, I didn't have that same priority. And I was always at the office. And don't get me wrong, your kids, they're proud of you, and like, oh, my dad works so hard, and he's always out there getting it, and all that. And it wasn't that they didn't have pride, that that I was that, that go-getter dad. But what they did reveal to me was that when they would ask me to do things like, hey dad, will you go play catch with me? Hey dad, will you go, ride my bike with me? Will you teach me this? Will you do this? I would always tell them like, oh, yeah, but I can't do that right now. Let's do it tomorrow. Right. And that statement became this mantra of my life for a very long time, to the point where they stopped asking me to do things. And when I got out of the hospital and I asked them, hey, why don't you ask me to do that? My oldest son was like, well, you always tell me tomorrow. And,
Mm.
when you hear that and your eyes have been opened, you're like, I can't unhear that now.
Ve- Very, 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 very deep. I have similar before what my situation, so I definitely understand the place of time and your kids and the value of family that we learn. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna run a video in, but I have a question just for you to think about when we come
Okay.
back, and then I'm gonna let Sid chime back in and Daryl chime back, and we're gonna all have a conversation with you.
Okay.
Do you fear life now? because of what happened. And I'm going to let you think about it. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be
Okay.
back.
All right.
All right.
I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor. I'm gonna make it. I'm a survivor. Keep on surviving.
All right.
You ready for us, Glenn?
I'm ready.
Because we back.
I'm ready.
All right. So did you think about the question?
I did think about the question.
Okay.
And
I'll
you know,
let me
that's
say
a
it
good
again
question.
really quick. I asked Glenn because of the situation, his life experience, almost losing his life in 44 days as a healthy man, and he mentioned that when you get a transplant, he actually had a heart transplant that they give you so many years, but as we know, can't nobody predict what God gonna do. That heart can be forever. But I just wanted to ask him, does he live in fear because of what happened?
So it's a very interesting question. And I would say that there's a yes to it and there's a no to it. I, there's a yes to the aspect of, do I have a certain fear of loss? Yeah, I think I do. Especially now with there's nothing I could even say to describe what a gift it was to 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 die and get like a second chance, and to see how many missed opportunities you had and so many things you weren't getting right, and to get almost like a do-over, and to now have the opportunity to get that do-over. It's like, well, now you feel like, man, like I definitely wouldn't want to lose that, right? You wouldn't want to give that up. So to that sense of loss, yeah, I think there's a little bit of hesitation or fear there. On the other side of that, there's a huge resounding no, because so much of what I do at this point is now living for the kingdom. I mean, the book that I've written, while it is part of my story about the heart transplant and all of that, there's so much more that we haven't talked about today that's a part of my book that goes all the way back to childhood. And I mean, and it, to just kind of briefly touch on it, it is a deconstruction of society from my perspective of how I see it, and the failure of leadership that is missing in today's world, from a biblical perspective. And I mean, to say that it's highly controversial would be an understatement, and to say that it basically goes after everybody would be an understatement. Like, I mean, I go after every controversial topic you could imagine, from sexual abuse to racism to abortion to transgender to, bad parenting to suicide and teen shootings to, just everything you could imagine that I talk about in the book, as as it pertains to a failure of leadership. And so, I mean, I know the level of heat and criticism and and things that I'm probably going to hear from attacking such controversial topics. So I don't live with the same sense of fear that I did before. And I think that that's something that was God given, and He was certainly the one that spurred me on to write it, because anybody that knows me will tell you, like, I mean, from the moment I walked, I wanted to conquer the world, but the one thing I didn't want to do was write a book. So, so I never had that ambition, and here I am now, an author. So, and and it's like, well, okay, but
Uh,
it's worked out that way. So.
It's beautiful how you talk about a failure in leadership. Now you're being a leader in leadership. That's a beautiful thing. It is. It is.
Well.
So I'm gonna cut Sid.
Yes.
City
So
Sid.
I
City
have
Sid. Come
two
on.
questions, and one is very much so like this is the first time I'm actually getting to talk to somebody who's received a transplant. So I have my own nosy question, but the second one is a very realistic question. So the first one, like I don't know if it's just because of what I believe or what I think could be possible, but do you ever feel like any like essence of the person whose heart that you have? Like how do you know what I mean? I know sometimes they have setups where you can meet the family, things like that. I don't know if that's your setup, but do you feel anything of having somebody else's heart?
I'll do you one better. There's a whole chapter in my book about it, and it's it's no it I wish I could explain to you how unreal it is. One of the things that, obviously, marriage is something that me and my wife do in our church. We went through marriage counseling because this was our second marriage, and so marriage counseling and helping people to avoid divorce was something that was near and dear to us. We had a blended family, and we know how hard that is, not only on us but on our children as well, and even extended family. And so it was kind of a passion project for us, and so how that ties into what I was going to say about what you asked is that coming out of the hospital, I had the most vivid dreams of a family that I never knew. I had a wife, I had kids, I had an older stepdaughter and two sons. I had vacations that I took with them, to the point where the heart that I got, like leaving the hospital, my heart was in love with a family and missed children that I never knew. And
wow.
I had to learn how to love my kids again. I had to fall back in love with my wife again. Like, it was a huge struggle, not only for me as an individual, not only for my wife as an individual, but for our faith. There was so much mental, I guess, mental conquering that had to happen, because physical intimacy with my wife was leading to guilt of feeling like I was having an affair because my heart was attached to someone else. And there was so much stuff that was going on there, and doing the research and having to learn how much, like, basically every organ transplantee talks about how, like, they feel this draw to other things. There's so many things about me as an individual, like likes, dislikes, tastes, things that I'm drawn to that I wasn't before, things that I hated before that I now love. Things that have changed about me as an individual, like little things, but like cars that I loved before that I now am like, I'm okay. Like, things that I hated before that I now have an affinity for, colors that I've, love now that I hated before. I mean, all kinds of little things about yourself that, like, through that discovery, you start to really not only see God's real design and like how absolutely complicated we are as human beings, but also that, like, where really is like our DNA, our code, our soul, our like our personal identity, right? Like who we are as people, and where does that transfer over? And it's like, and in my own conclusion, it's like it's in every single part of us, right? It's in every part, not just like our brain or our foot, our thumb, or our lung, or our heart. It's in every part of you. And if you take that one part and you give it to somebody else, you are truly giving them a part of yourself. Like, and it can't just not go without. So, but great question. I mean,
It's
but it
deep.
is a part of the book. So yeah, I
That's
definitely,
deep.
I had to share that with people because it's been a crazy ride to have to deal with that in our marriage. And, and it's something that people don't think about or talk about when they, go through that. And, and it certainly can lead to people getting divorced or giving up or, or really struggling. So.
See, you confirmed. You confirmed. I'm not crazy. What I thought could possibly happen
No, it's a
with
beautiful
somebody
thing.
else's body parts.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful thing because I'm
Right.
I'm a kidney donor. So
Okay.
yeah, I gave my grandmother my kidney 20 21. Yep. On my
Yeah.
day before my birthday. So yeah,
Okay.
I
Wow.
definitely under yeah.
At least it stayed in the family.
Well, it's
No doubt.
we no comment.
Oh, that family.
Okay.
Stay right in the
Maybe a
family.
different.
Keep that in. But I tell you, this is some good stuff here. I'm telling you, this is some good stuff here. I have this question, and because I know that the time is running out, I have to ask this question.
Okay.
What is the metaphorics? It's something in that, and it could very be simple. What is the heart to submit? What is that? What is that? I mean, because when I read it, I was, you know how you try to figure, because it's something, it's something in there. What is that? Can you explain that to our viewers? What is that? What is that title?
It's, it really, it was an evolution of a lot of different things. But I think for me, the meaning behind the title really was about submitting your life. You know, uh, there's so much that really goes into the book, and it talks about, there's every section of the book, there's 10 sections, and every single one of them is called something different, right? Heart to change, heart to love, heart to live. Like, there's all these different sections of the book, and within each section it takes you through a minute by minute account of what I went through in my heart transplant. But then it also then takes you back, and it goes through life circumstances of all the things that I went through to get here, and the journey of of all of it. And so I think so much of it is about submitting in life to what God has for you. And, and even in the death of what happened, it was about submitting. And, there's a lot of things there that are so, I'm so passionate about, right? And I start with things that I'm probably the most passionate about because they're near and dear to me. And so the heart to submit is talking about that it takes more heart, it takes more courage to submit to something than it does to resist something, and to give into what God has for you, to give into what he knows is better for you, because you don't see as far down the road as he does, is what I hope is the resounding message that people take away from my experiences as I share that with others, to say, you know what, like, I know that, I haven't always gotten it right. And towards the end here, it's like I'm starting to figure it out a little bit, but I hope that people don't have to go through all the things I've gone through to figure it out. And if I can share that little bit of wisdom with them to speed up their road to the end, right, and give them a shortcut, then maybe they can submit sooner than I did, and they don't have to on the
That's
table,
good. That's good
you
stuff.
know.
Powerful,
That's good
powerful.
stuff. That's
So
good stuff.
Sid has another question
Yeah.
before we close out.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and let Sid ask the final question, and this is phenomenal. You are so powerful. You are amazing. Because what folks don't understand is I've been there with you. When you're given that second chance at life, it changes your life. So yeah.
Now, I'm just ask this to round it out. It's all right. Mood music. All right. So just to round it out, because I'm that person, like I like to put things in perspective. I like to, take parts of your life experience and where, others might think that it's going to apply, and make sure that it applies. So I'm asking you this as somebody who actually has an autoimmune chronic illness and somebody who is in the insurance industry. Were you prepared for this type of catastrophic event at all? Whether that was financially or, a game plan, a safety plan, something you discussed with the entire family. Were you prepared? And if not, and even if you were, what are those things you did to get yourself prepared? Because your story, your life experience is one that I hate hearing, but it's one of those that I can directly draw from and talk to clients about every day, because things like this do happen every day. And things where you say, I'm going to put it off, we're going to talk about it tomorrow, I'm going to talk about it next year. You might miss that deadline. So, what did you have in place to secure yourself, financially for any of these catastrophic things? Or what can you suggest for anybody, just trying to get some things set in stone to take care of their family if they're not here anymore?
Yeah. Definitely not prepared. As far as the aftercare of it all, or the long-term care of it all, I mean, I had literally looked at life insurance for my wife and kids in February before all of this happened. And I was looking at term life policy thinking like, well, I'm like, yeah, those are really good rates, and I want to do it before I turn 40. So I'm going to definitely make a plan to take advantage of that. And I was intending to actually start the policy. And I was, I was still operating on my timetable, and that timetable was too late. As far as health insurance, it's a long story, but the short version of it is that we were using the healthcare marketplace, and every year we had to apply to get denied for CHIP and WIC for our kids in order to then be able to start a policy. And that particular year, because of COVID, they were late in giving us the denial. And so in March, when I first got sick, we didn't have insurance. In April, we finally got the letter, but our insurance didn't go into effect until May 1st. So all of the stuff that happened from March through April was all 100% on our dime. And then from May 1st on was on our insurance's dime. So we ended up getting about $300,000 worth of medical bills that were all ours.
2 months.
In 2 months. And then there was another $980,000 worth of medical bills that got paid to our insurance for the heart transplant itself. And then, of course, over the last couple of years, there's been another couple $100,000 worth of medical bills as well that that don't even account to that. And so it's just been, it's been incredible. I will say that, God has incredibly blessed us and taken care of us. We worked with the hospital. We were able to take care of all of ours within the last 2 years. Which has been incredible. And it certainly wasn't because we were so prepared for it. But I'm now not eligible for term life insurance because of my condition. And so it certainly is one of those life lessons that you have to learn that, the time is now and not when I get around to it, and I certainly wish that I could have gotten, those things in place for my family so that they could have been taken care of if something would have happened beforehand, because they would have already been here and they couldn't have turned me away, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is a lesson learned. And if you're hearing it from Glen, it is important to protect you and your family. So get your insurance today. And if you're looking for a Sid right down here, she is your direct plug and connect. Yes, we are using all of our resources.
I just want to say, for anybody listening to this that has been through a similar situation as Glen or not, but we do have guaranteed issue policies that do not require any medical exam or underwriting for final expenses up to $15,000. So if you've ever been denied in the past, or you got something going on that you would normally be approved for, I'm your girl. Okay.
Yep.
Right.
And you heard her. And if you see the advertisement on here, Sid was advertised, and we will put in our information how to get in touch. I'll tag Sid on how to get some insurance today.
Yep.
Glen, thank you so much for joining Unfiltered Unspoken. We really, this was phenomenal, powerful. I mean, you touched my heart. And I know you're going to touch many, 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 many more. And with that closing, can you let folks know how to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. We have with our Facebook page, it's facebook.com/hearttosubmit.com. I'm sorry, facebook.com/hearttosubmit. You can also reach out at Instagram, same way, instagram.com/hearttosubmit. We also do have a direct email, which is connect@hearttosubmit.com. So any of those is fine. And we will actually respond. So feel free to email us if you have questions, concerns, anything.
Okay, and what about the book? Tell them about the book.
I need me a signed copy.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I get
my address?
I definitely want a signed copy of your book.
I will definitely keep you guys informed. We're looking at probably about 5 weeks out before it'll actually be available on Amazon for purchase. It will be paperback and ebook. So whether you like it like, Kindle ebook, or whether you want an actual paperback copy, either one of those will be available through Amazon. And then we are thinking about also offering like copies through our website, which we're looking to develop as well. But it's going to be about 5 weeks. We don't have an actual hard date just yet, but as soon as I do get that date, I will certainly share it with you guys so that you guys can put it out to everybody. So, but it will definitely be end of November, first week of December.
Okay, perfect. So if for everyone, Glen, are you in the Good Fight chat group?
I am.
Okay, perfect. So once you get that information for your book, please post it in the Good Fight chat group so that we can definitely, share the information. I know your book is going to be phenomenal. So I definitely, if I have to get the copy and mail it to you so you can sign it and send it back, that's what we're going to do. So I definitely want a signed copy. We appreciate you joining Unfiltered Unspoken again. Y'all tune in next week.